Hey kids, welcome to Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox, your ambassador to conscious embodiment, coming at you for the week of August 21st through the 28th. Big week, because I turned 60 on Wednesday.
Happy birthday.
I'm so excited. I have wanted to be older since I was born. Like, you know, when I was a kid, the phrase was 8 going on 40. 8 going on 40. I was like, damn, well, that sounds good. I can't wait to be 40. And truly, my life didn't really open up until I was 40 in the way that I'm living it now. So, yes, I turned 60 on Wednesday, and I like being older, and I love the wisdom chapter that I'm in, so I am certainly open to receiving lots of birthday wishes. Happy birthday to me, Leo sun. As ever, we start with a question. I'm actually coming to a point where the questions are backlogging a little bit, so understand that if you got, I love the questions, keep them coming. I keep track of them all, and so and we're also repeating questions, and that's okay with me. I don't mind doing a question today that I've answered in the past, especially this question, because it's really about like people's understanding of the difference between Vedic astrology and Western astrology and why the frickin' signs don't line up with the constellations in Western astrology, which is confusing to a lot of people. So, happy to answer this question more than once. Haley writes, hey, Michael, just have to say, since finding your podcast a couple of months ago, it quickly became the one I look forward to the most. Yay. Thank you, Haley. I appreciate how you teach and discuss the geometry of what is actually happening with the planets in real time. Because of that, I'd love your opinion about Vedic versus Western astrology and how it relates to precession, P-R-E-C-E-S-S-I-O-N, precession. It's hard for me to fully get into Western when it's not lined up with the constellations in real time. That's important for this question. How do you rationalize the planets technically not being in the signs that Western astrology says they are in? Thanks so much. All the best, Haley. And then she says, shameless plug. She said this, not me, but it's still a shameless plug. P.S. I'm excited to learn that you're launching your astrology school. I'm going to try to join, but it's hard to get the time with a 2-year-old. I get that, Haley. But astrology school's open, kids, so head on over to michaellennox.com if you're ready to learn how to read your natal chart. Shameless plug over. I love answering this question because it really is a peccadillo for people when trying to take in astrology as a thing, as a true thing, when people discover that the placement of planets that Western astrology describes as being in a sign does not line up with the actual constellations in the sky. And that is accurate, but I'm going to do my best to explain the sort of distinctions and the why this is. First, let me say this. Vedic astrology does not rely on sign placement in the way that Western astrology does. Vedic is concerned so prominently with where the moon is when someone is born, and the 28 mansions of the moon in Vedic astrology present an idea of astrology as a signifier for who you're going to be in your life, doesn't rely on planet placement in the same way that Western does. And I'm not enough of an expert in Vedic astrology to really explain like why that is. Because they do look at sign placement. That is a thing in Vedic. Here's how it works in Western astrology. You assume that The signs and the constellations are the same thing, and they are way not. They are not the same thing at all. Constellations are stars in the sky that form shapes that people have identified, and they relate to origin stories that were told in mythologies that might describe the quality and the essence of the shape that the stars are making. Right, so Aries really is a ram, and you look at the stars that make up that constellation. It doesn't look like a ram to me. It just looks like a bunch of stars. But there are these constellations that hint at the order of the zodiac. But constellations are not 30 degrees wide. They're small and large. They're wide and narrow. They're different shapes. And in Western astrology, the movement through the signs isn't a function of the backdrop of the stars. It's a function of the time that it takes for the sun to move 30 degrees from the Earth's perspective. Every sign is exactly 30 degrees wide. There's a 360-degree circle. You divide that by 12. That equals 30. And it's a symmetrical pie chart or pie thing. It's a pie.
Slice.
There you go. It's a pie with 12 equal slices. Okay. Put that on a shelf in your listening for the moment, kids. Now let's just think about what happens at the vernal equinox in the northern hemisphere. So the vernal equinox in the northern hemisphere is first day of spring up here, and it's the moment when days and nights are of exactly equal length. And so that is set up by a geometrical relationship between the Earth and the sun that establishes that we're at this equal length of day and night moment, and we call that the vernal equinox. Now, where that vernal equinox is in relationship to the stars in the sky, literally, is not 0 degrees of Aries. It's in fact 17 degrees off that because Vedic astrology follows precession, which really has something to do with the galactic orbit, 26,000 years, the ages of astrology that move backwards. And in precession, there's a recognition that alpha omega moment of the spring equinox happens where it happens, but it's not Aries anymore. But in Western astrology, whether you like this or you don't like this, we start the equinox and we call that 0 degrees of Aries. And then the sign of Aries is the amount of time that it takes for the relative position of the sun to move 30 degrees. And then it moves into Taurus, and it spends exactly the same amount of time in that mansion moving 30 degrees. So the signs in Western astrology are more about the order of the archetypes, which is the natural order of the zodiac, which is the same in both Western and Vedic. And we just say that the start of the moment is this relationship between the Earth and the sun and the sunlight that impacts our pineal glands, and we call that the starting point. And for whatever reason this seems important for Western astrologers to do or have done, resetting it every year as a kind of fictional 0 degrees of Aries gives us a system of the movement of our conscious awareness through an archetypal system that starts with Aries, ends with Pisces, and is essentially a precise, geometrical, symmetrical, 12-pronged process. So I'll round this out. Hopefully that is clear to people, like why or how we do that, whether you like it or not. Like that's the why of it, or I don't know if that's really why, but that's the so of it, that we reset calling the vernal equinox in the northern hemisphere 0 degrees of Aries. And the reason why I think Western astrology can work with that is because, again, The constellations are not the signs. They're just the sort of mural drawn on the sky that loosely replicates the order of this archetypal evolution that starts with Aries and ends up in Pisces. And so the backdrop of the mural, which is the ecliptic of stars, is merely a suggestion of the order of the archetypes. And in Western, we simply call that vernal equinox moment 0 degrees of Aries. And the backdrop shifts over many, many thousands of years due to this precession. But we still start the system up generally around March 21st as here's the beginning, and we're going to move through these signs in exactly 30-degree pie pieces. And when we've completed all 12, we're back again at the next vernal equinox. The big news of the week, kids, is Mercury turning around and going retrograde, which he will do on August 23rd, Wednesday. Happy birthday to me. Mm-hmm. And as we start this week off, Mercury is already in his station, meaning he's at 21 degrees of Virgo, not moving, will turn around Wednesday, and will not move for another couple of days. So we have a stationed Mercury all week long. Now, what this means is communication is challenged doubly, not just because he's going to turn around Wednesday and from Wednesday through the rest of the week, we've got him just facing backwards, not paying attention to where we're going. And so we bump into the furniture a lot when Mercury's backwards. But even as of yesterday and today and tomorrow, before the turnaround, the fact that the planet of communication appears to be not moving at all, then our communication is hindered because of this lack of movement. Mercury moves fast enough that in his typical movement, it's not even a full degree in a day, like 3/4 of a degree a day. And he's zipping by very fast. And so you can think of the pace of your thought and the pace of your communication as that rapid. And now there's no movement for the communication planet. Our expression, our perception becomes hindered. So there's Mercury retrograde shenanigans all week, certainly more towards the end than the beginning, but we're not in great communicative flow really from the moment you hear this podcast. If you know your charts, the Mercury retrograde is happening in Virgo. The degrees are 8 to 21. So that means that Mercury is at 21 degrees right now of Virgo, and when he turns around, he'll move back to 8 degrees. And if you look back to August 3rd, that's when Mercury first hit 8 degrees of Virgo. And so between August 3rd and this coming Wednesday is the retrograde shadow. So we've gotten all the information we need to have a powerful and less bumpy, well, I don't know if you can have a less bumpy Mercury retrograde, but you can certainly have a more effective and valuable one if you're prepared in advance for some of the challenges that are likely to come up between August 23rd and September 15th when he's in his backward motion. So glance back to August 3rd to this Wednesday for like what I like to call the brochure of the retrograde. All the hints you need have already occurred. Then, of course, Mercury will turn around and go direct in September on the 15th, and then by the end of September, he will wrap up and finish up that third act, which is called the direct shadow, where Mercury is now direct, but moving over the same territory he's hit twice before, wraps up some of the communicative issues that have already come up. That's next month. We'll talk all about it when we get there. Meanwhile, we've been through all of what we call the triple transits that Mercury's going to be making. And so I'll remind you guys of what the lay of the land is with what Mercury's sort of offering us. First and foremost,
why did I think like the triple transit is throughout? So like there's...
Well, it is. That's what I'm saying. It is. But they've only happened once.
Got it. Okay.
In the triple idea, then they're going to happen a second time while he's backwards, and then they'll happen a third time between September 15th and 30th. That's what we mean by triple transits.
Yes.
So we've already had all of these that I'm about to describe once between August 3rd and the 23rd on Wednesday. None of them happened today, tomorrow, Wednesday, so these are behind us. And they include an inconjunct to Chiron, a trine to Jupiter, a sesquisquare to the North Node, and also another sesquisquare to Pluto. The inconjunct, my favorite angle in all of astrology, the great eliminator angle that affords us a chance to like make adjustments, get on a new path, change the track you're on. And when it's Chiron that's holding the other end of the great eliminator angle, then we are, through our healing processes, and Venus is very engaged in healing right now, through our healing processes, yeah, you too, Zoe, huh? It's easier this week than it was last week, I'll tell you that much. We'll get to that in a second. But anyway, Mercury in conjuncting Chiron allows whatever healing we have amassed will enable us to make some new perception changes, to see our world a little bit more through our healed eyes than our wounded eyes. A trine to Jupiter is lovely. That means that we're in good connection with confidence and optimism. The only thing I'll say about that trine is Jupiter makes everything go over the top, which could put a lot of over-the-top Mercury retrograde shenanigans into this retrograde. You know, one of Mercury's ruling signs is Virgo. So my experience is that when Mercury's retrograde in his own sign, I think that the bumps to the furniture get more intense, not less. Mm-hmm. I also have Mercury in Virgo in my natal chart, so that may be more personal to me than to the world, but that's my experience, so I'm sticking with it. The sesquisquare is agitation and frustration geometry. That also doesn't bode well for the shenanigan piece of Mercury's trickster sensibilities.
Yeah, I could only imagine.
Yeah. And a sesquisquare to the North Node means we're having some agitation and frustration about where we want to get to, what we're trying to accomplish, like next, because the North Node is our next sort of stop. A sesquisquare from Mercury to Pluto is all of the shitty communication styles that are out there, like avoidance, passive aggression, manipulation, power struggles that inhabit your voice even when you don't want them to. So that's another diciness to this particular Mercury retrograde. And I'm going to name this one as fairly dicey.
Okay.
Now, Mercury rules Virgo, but so does Chiron. And I always remind us of that, kids, whenever we're in the Virgo mansion in any significant way. Chiron has dispositional rule over the process. So Mercury rules this Mercury retrograde because it's in Virgo. So that means communication will be doubly challenged because the planet of communication himself is the one that's in the underworld. And the rulership from Chiron makes it a healing process. Good for us. Now, Venus is retrograde, and she won't go direct till September 3rd. When Mercury turns around on Wednesday, then we've got both mind and heart in the unconscious processes of a retrograde. That's like a week and a half of the kinds of challenges that can come when our communication is a little hampered, and so is how we relate to our emotional body. In terms of this week, there is some Venus activity that actually hits on Tuesday, so it's kind of before Mercury turns around, but it does set up that the Venus retrograde process has some juice Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday that's part of Mercury's turning around. So listen, I don't even know what to sort of give you people as guidance for this other than to just sort of like move slowly and mindfully in such a way that you would naturally do if somebody told you, hey, be careful, the staircase is treacherous, you might slip. You'd walk differently.
Right.
So just walk differently. I'm thinking of Young Frankenstein, where Frau Blucher turns around with the candle that's like not lit. And she says, stay close to the candle. The staircase can be treacherous. So we are walking up a staircase in the dark. It might be treacherous. So just be a little bit more mindful especially with your communication, kids. It's like if the emotional body is in a deep process, and then the communication planet gets us into a squeeze, the combo could be little bits of reactivity and emotional challenge in our communication that doesn't have to be there if we move a little more slowly and mindfully. Meaning restraint of pen and tongue, keep your own counsel, and just stay close to the candle because the staircase might be treacherous. Tuesday, tomorrow, is the next Venus retrograde triple transit. And to your point, Zoe, this is the second time that we've experienced this. And then there'll be a third one up ahead. This is not the deeper, healing, shadowy, juicy Venus transits that we had last week. Like last week was just nutty. Venus was with Black Moon Lilith, opening up shadows, squaring Uranus, knocking us on our ass, trining Chiron, so healing and ass knocking and shadow. Like it's juicy week for matters of the heart. And we're not done with that because Venus is still retrograde. So it's not like sometimes you'll hear me say the phrase, in your rearview mirror. Not in our rearview mirror, it's in the fucking back seat.
Okay.
She's still there. Because we're going to come this way again. We're going to meet up with Black Moon Lilith. We're going to square Uranus again with Venus, when she wraps up, right? So it's not in our rearview mirror. We're still involved in the process. And a square between Venus and Jupiter is ultimately, you can't call that an air quotes bad thing because the planet of love and the planet of expansion are dancing together. How bad could that be? And I hate saying the word bad because I don't like good or bad, but challenging, negative, whatever, and there's a trope in astrology that says there's no such thing as a bad Jupiter transit because it's a planet that cannot bring things that we would call bad. But there's a shadow of Jupiter that is absolutely something that we will contend with this week, which is overdoing things, overreacting, overvaluing. This is one thing that's really clear, Jupiter and Venus in a square can make you see something as shiny and wonderful that will lose its luster in the long run because it's not sustainable or it's built on, a rocky foundation. Now, if there's something about overvaluing some aspect of your heart's desire that you might be grappling with this week, then look back to June 11th. That's the date that Venus and Jupiter squared the first time. So you look at that date and maybe a day or so before and a day or so after, and if there was anything in your intimacy, love relationship, platonic relationships, or how you relate to your finances that was either bigger than you thought the experience merited in terms of reactions, or if something that came your way that second week in June that looked like the best thing ever, it might not be. It might be more for your learning and lesson than for your trophy shelf. So look for those kinds of things that hit that second week in June. And just be on the lookout for things that feel a little bit over the top that might need your attention in a kind of healing sort of way. The sun is going to in conjunct Pluto today, leading into this square between Venus and Jupiter tomorrow. Sun is our conscious awareness. Pluto holds the shadow. Venus has been engaged in deep shadow work and healing during this cycle. And so before we hit this tomorrow piece of the square between Venus and Jupiter, today we actually have the opportunity to, with our conscious awareness, glimpse some of the aspects of shadow and underworld material that Pluto holds that's ready to be let go of, ready to be healed, ready to be released. On Friday, Venus is actually going to pass through a brief semi-square with her beloved Mars. This is not part of her retrograde cycle because Mars is going to keep on going while she's, still moving backwards. But that interaction is going to color what we're learning about our emotional experience, our relational processes, and how we view our finances. And it's like it's a mild conflict. Mild conflict between Venus and Mars can actually be really yummy. It's great for passion. It's great for sex. Mm-hmm. It's great for the challenge between assertiveness and aggression to come up. And then all of the processes that we are in that are healing and reworking stuff from below the surface of our unconscious. If we move through the end of the week and there are these aggressive, assertive challenges, that the process that we're in will help you move with assertiveness over aggression. So it's definitely an important week for the Venus retrograde cycle, but nothing like last week's sort of deep dive into shadow and overwhelm. Try to take what you're learning and healing about how you give and receive love and apply it to anything that comes up as we move through this week and tomorrow's big square. I don't always talk about the quarter moons in the lunar cycle when they occur, and it really, really depends on how much else there is to talk about. It's not like they're some months they're valuable to speak of and others they're not. I speak of it if I have the time. We have the time today because it's a slim-ish week this week. And we are moving through the first quarter moon on Thursday. So here's the brief overview of the lunar cycle in general. We set intentions when the sun and the moon are together because our conscious awareness and the unconscious are in alignment. That's a perfect place to use our conscious awareness to set intentions deep into the unconscious where they can thrive, take root, and grow. At the first quarter moon, a week later, the moon has moved 90 degrees. Now the conscious awareness of the sun and the unconscious of the moon are at odds. They're not agreeing. They're like the wall and the floor yelling at each other to do it differently. So this is a crisis moment where, now this is theoretical, not literal, the intentions we set at the new moon either fail to thrive or thrive. That's when the seed is going to crack open, and that's a crisis. Imagine being the seed. No, the farmer's thrilled, but the seed's in misery. That's the first quarter moon. Crisis of, will the desires I've created have movement or not? At the full moon, we harvest the benefit and release the chaff, that which no longer serves. The third quarter moon is interesting. It's another crisis. The sun and the moon are now again at odds in this 90-degree conflict. But we've already been through the full moon. We've already harvested a benefit and released that which didn't serve. We've got wisdom. Make sense?
Yes.
Thank you. So the third quarter moon, crisis again, but it's the crisis where we're tested to sort of deliver the wisdom we've been handed. Mm-hmm. So that third quarter moon is where we're tested. I like to say we're tested to bring our A game. So we are a week away from the past new moon. We have the first quarter moon on Thursday, which means Thursday is going to be a bit of a crisis. where we're certainly, if nothing else, the sensation of Thursday is that many people will feel out of balance between their inner and outer experience, right? The sun is our outer experience, the moon is our inner. Mars is trining Pluto that same day. That's a really aggressive, amplified energy of action and movement and anger and reactivity and goals and ambitions, like not just the negative stuff, in harmony with the shadow, power, and authority planet. On the one hand, that's an energy that can be stewarded to bring and harness your own personal power in the direction of things you want to accomplish. In and of itself, that's a beautiful energy of movement and productivity with Mars and Pluto in a trine. That said, Mercury's just turned around and he's still stuck at 21 degrees Virgo. Venus is retrograde as well. We're in that third quarter moon. Mars and Venus are going to semi-square the next day. The 2 days before that, Venus squared Jupiter, giving us a kind of an over-the-top sensation. So I mentioned the first quarter moon on Thursday because it's a moment of friction and edginess in a week that's otherwise more tame than the week we're coming out of. But understand that as we get into Thursday and Friday into the weekend, there's a little bit of stress to contend with. Nothing that we can't handle, kids. Just go out there and, stay close to the candle on the staircase and have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have an email from Alyssa, and she wanted to get a little bit of insight about 2 reoccurring dreams, which I thought was interesting. So
Great.
she says, I have 2 types of recurring dreams. One I call the stress dreams, and one I call the P dreams. I, Zoe, find, stress dreams, they come up a lot, but I thought P was interesting.
I can't wait to hear what she means by P.
Yeah.
And before you even continue, I too say that there are 2 types of recurring dreams. And one of them is, I call them anxiety dreams. Stress is good enough, where
Right.
you have the same stressful imagery every time you're stressed, right? Lots of young'uns these days, it's all video game imagery or zombies or vampires. They're so big in the media. Tsunamis is another one. Being chased is another one. Yeah, and so a lot of people have like a vocabulary of a stress dream that'll be repeated all over again. What does she mean by P?
Let's go. All right, so she starts with a stress dream. The ones I figure are stress dreams usually have a theme of me having to hurry up and get somewhere because there's impeding doom. And I can't gather all my things because there's too much stuff. Obstacles pop up. Sometimes I cannot find my clothes or classwork, or I can't get all my animals in their carriers, or I'm trying to save kittens. Just some scenario that is usually incredibly stressful and I can't win, no matter how much I hurry.
No
and
matter how.
run.
Yeah.
And the P dreams are much more straightforward in that I usually pee at an inappropriate time in my dream.
Oh, pee as in urination.
Oh, yeah. What
Oh!
did you think? The food?
No, I just thought it was some like cute demarcation that might mean dreams that are recurring, but not just the typical anxiety dreams. But I get it. This is a specific theme.
Yes, yes.
I would call
Yes.
this the same kind of dream, right? The I can't find my stuff and the P dreams are similar but distinct.
Both
So
stressful.
we'll do that. But go on. Is there anything else that we need to hear? What she has
So
said?
she
Yeah.
says, in last night's dream, I was sitting in the dining hall at the house where I met up with my best friend, and I had to pee very badly, but I couldn't find the bathroom. So I decided to just sit there in my metal chair and let it loose. Then I cleaned it up with my sweatshirt and threw it in the garbage. Of course, when I woke up, I had to pee. I have even crazier versions of that, and I'm frightened that one day I'm actually going to pee in my bed. Happy to hear your thoughts. Blessings, Alyssa. So is it
Fabulous.
just you have to pee in real life and thus in
Well,
your
there's
dream
absolutely a correlation to everything that our physical body is experiencing when we're asleep. We have this illusion about what sleep is, that it's like a binary of like we're awake or we're asleep. And when we're asleep, we're like off.
right?
But the only thing that's off in sleep is the conscious awareness monologuing mind that's narrating the experience. So if you have to pee, you have to pee. If the alarm rings and you're sleeping, that's going to enter your dream.
Right.
So, yet, what I love about the brain and the mind and dreams and the psyche is I don't think that it's just so randomly connected to physiology that the dreams aren't interpretable.
Mm-hmm.
There is a very big distinction in Alyssa's dreams between the hurry up, I can't get my shit together fast enough, and the stakes are high, and the P dream, because the theme is completely different. Like in the stress dream, it's really all about just life is moving faster than we can. There's too much to do. And so the dream, you know, it's like the brain is saying to Alyssa, like, go see Inside Out, the Pixar movie. The way they
still
describe
haven't seen that. I want to see that.
Oh my God, Zoe, you are not allowed to come back next week without having seen that. It's literally a movie about how the brain works with emotions and memory and core wounds and core memory. Like, it's such a gorgeous mythology, but based on like science of how things work. And there's just moments in the dream. I mean, the dream. There are moments in that movie that replicate the idea of the character in the movie has certain images that her brain knows match certain kinds of stress and fear.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So every time Alyssa is stressed from there's too much to do and I'm overwhelmed, this dream will help her process those feelings of overwhelm and wake up the next day successful at getting all of her animals into their carriers while she's awake. But the P dream is about toxicity that needs to be released.
Okay, that is not what I thought you were going to say.
Well, think about what urine is. It's the most toxic elements, minerals, chemicals, and stuff that are in our bodies that the lymphatic system and the renal system filter out. So it's like the worst of, like, if you couldn't pee, you would die. That's why people go on dialysis when their kidneys start to work. It's lethal, deadly stuff in your urine. So to not be able to release that in the dream state is to be in some consideration of the building up of toxic material that needs to get out. Now, this particular dream is interesting, so we can interpret into the layers of what Alyssa has shared with us specifically. One is that she's in a dining hall. So that means the dream is about the consideration of ways in which she is nurtured and sustained or not. So loosely, because we're talking about releasing toxicity, we'll just call the dining hall as a setting means that we're in Alyssa's consideration of self-care and how well she's taking care of her immediate needs. So then we have that she's met her best friend. So this best friendship might be the source of toxicity. Maybe, maybe not. But there's something about the best friend's presence in this dream that's important for Alyssa to consider. Either the relationship itself is reflecting some toxic stuff that Alyssa needs to release, or the way the friend deals with release and toxicity and self-care and whatnot might be helpful to Alyssa at this time. Right? I can't know where really to go without chatting more like directly with Alyssa if she was here live. But that would be where I would invite Alyssa to go with considering why this best friend and why not somebody else. And it's either going to be something like, because I've got some toxicity in this relationship that I'm considering releasing or not, or the friend has wisdom or helpfulness, which is why she's there in the dream. I don't know how previous P dreams have gone, but I like the image of her letting loose where she is. To me, that reflects a kind of, well, first of all, it's self-honoring.
Okay.
She has to pee.
Yeah.
Let it loose. Who's to say we can't pee wherever the fuck we want? Now, there might be consequences based on where we pee, but even in the dream, she handles the consequences well. She's able to mop up the residual with a sweatshirt. That's not even a fancy piece of clothing. That means like something day-to-day, something associated with comfort and warmth, is able to help her clean up this sort of need that she had to let loose. I'm reminded of an experience I had with a friendship recently where there was a momentary bump between us that doesn't happen a lot, but it's guaranteed to happen every handful of months because of the way I communicate and the way they communicate, right? And so the toxic little conversation we had would be akin to, because I didn't want to have it, neither did he, would be akin to just like letting loose, trusting that we can clean it up when we need to or after the fact. So I think that this particular dream is showing, again, I can't know this for sure because I'm not hearing the other B dreams, but I think this dream might be expressing some kind of mature relationship with how to relate to letting loose toxicity. Like I'd rather have somebody letting loose with their pee willy-nilly over holding it in, and then maybe learning how to control that more, which is just symbolism for learning more direct communication, letting out the angry, hurt feelings little by little so they don't build up, communicating frequently enough so that the pressure doesn't build. Pressure, like pressure of the bladder filled with, urine, that's like pressure. And while it's likely that Alyssa's actual bladder might be a consistent participant in this dream, there's so many other ways that could be expressed that the way the dream plays out has meaning.
Okay.
Right? Like there could be a storyline that's just as simple as, I got to get to the bathroom. I got to get to the bathroom. I've heard thousands of dreams like that. But this one is not just that. It has subtle permutations based on who she's with and what she does. And that's the way to get distinctions when this dream recurs, is to look at the other storylines and characters who participate will give distinctions about why this moment of a toxicity dream is applicable.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.